When I found my passion, it really hurt. This video is actually an overflow of another video I created on how to find your passion. I said in there, I'm going to tell you how I got to do what I'm doing, which is something I absolutely love. So if you haven't watched that video, you might want to watch that one first, but otherwise, I mean, you're here now. And I'm going to try and keep it as concise as I possibly can, which is hard to do when you're like, here's my story, right? So growing up, I was not a spectacular kid. I was average. My mom told me I was special, but average student. I went to Arizona State University for a computer science degree, average, college student. Also working at Microwage, a company called Microwage. 3 shifts, 3 12-hour shifts, and they paid you for 40 hours. What a deal. On an assembly line where literally computers would roll up, you would install ISA cards and PCI cards, kind of customize them. This was the days before Dell and customizing your PCs, right? And install Windows 3.1 or Windows NT or whatever operating system on there and get it all set up and send it on its way, right? That company accidentally sent me to a training class. Now, I would not describe myself as a passionate individual at that point. I wasn't really thrilled with my career. I was just doing what I needed to do to make an income, right? So I went to that training class and I was like, wow, there's so much stuff here I didn't even know existed. And so once Microwave found out, I didn't raise my hand and be like, hey, I'm not supposed to be here. They were mad and they cut my training. But I went to that training center. I purchased a class on how to be a trainer. And my whole reason for doing that was simply because when I saw the instructor up there, I was like, that would be fun. Like, you would never forget this stuff if you were talking about it all. Like, that was my only motivation. I'd love to say, grand, I had like these grand aspirations. I didn't, right? And so in that class, at the end of it, I asked the instructor, who happened to be another instructor at the training, so I was like, what do you need to do to be a trainer? Like, if I wanted to be a trainer here, what would I do? And he said, tell you what, if you pass the certification exam of Microsoft class that I had taken there, then you're hired. Now, so first off, no resume that he really cared about. No, man, you've got a huge background in this. Like, it was literally like, just ask the question, and I ended up there. And side note, that's how so many people end up in an amazing career, is just by talking to people. So I'll keep that for another video someday. So long story short, my first class that I had to teach was a group of US West technicians before they were Quest, before they were CenturyLink, about this new up-and-coming technology called DSL. And how to install a network card in somebody's computer when you go to their house, because everybody's computer didn't have network cards back then. I'm up all night. Like, I know the material. I'm pacing, and come the day of, like, I'm literally in front of the room shaking. I'm not a public speaker. I'm like, hi, I'm Jeremy, and it was horrible. Like, it was the worst experience, like sweat dripping down. Like, those students had to feel terrible. And I remember looking at the clock at the back of the room, and I was like, if I see that minute hand get to 8:45, I was watching it. I was like, I'm just walking. I'm walking out the back of this room. I'm never coming back. And so I'm going through all the student introductions, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, they're almost done. And I'm like, okay. And so it started, and then somebody asked me a question. An angel sent from God in that room asked me a question. They're like, so, I don't even remember what it was. They're like, so, da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And so I answered their question. I'm like, okay. And then someone else was like, it's a question that stemmed from that. And I'm like, oh. So like 30 minutes later, I'm just answering these little popcorn questions. And I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good, right? And thus was the tale of how that all began. Now, I didn't end that class and be like, I'm now passionate about being like if I could relay some of the stories of, like, it's the Sunday night before the class begins, I can't get this thing working. I'm literally throwing up in the bathroom because my nerves have hit me, and I'm like, I'm going to have a whole crew of people here that are expecting me to know how to set up a Novell firewall, and I just learned what port forwarding was, last week, and I'm like, oh man, like stress. And so the fact is, when people say, well, how did you get to where you are? How did you get like this passion for technology and all, teaching and all this stuff? Like, I always say, I cheated. The reason I cheated, and this is where I'm going to link back to the previous video on how to find your passion, is because I had a motivation. If I showed up and I didn't know what I was talking about, I would be crucified. I would look like a fool. I would have all of these people that are like, you are ignorant and we just paid to be in this class and you don't know what you're talking about. So literally night after night, week after week, I was so motivated to just learn and test and try because I didn't want to show up that next morning and find out that I have a room full of people staring at me that knew more than I did about what I was talking about and crucified me, right? So that is built-in motivation to develop a passion. And by the way, that's where the passion comes from. And that's where the other video. It's from doing the hard work to really become good at something. When you're good at something, you gain a passion for it. Why do you think all of these technology vendors are spending millions to create these certification programs? It's not so they can get your $100 test fee. No, they know that if they indoctrinate you, if they motivate you to get these certifications to help find a job and things like that, you're going to be passionate about them. Because when you get to that job, you're going to be like, I recommend Novell or Cisco, Novell, obviously. Like, you're going to be their biggest fan because you really know them. It's the skill that you gained that made you passionate. So that's where I'm going to link to the other video and say, that's how you create your passion. You don't find it. You don't discover it. You look under the rug and you're like, oh, there it is. Yeah, oh, okay, now I'm going to do that. And that's going to be a great career and it's going to make me millions of dollars. No, you create your passion by becoming a master of a skill that you can then sell. Essentially, you can be that employee. So that's it. That's how I ended up. And obviously that's the short version. I could expand a ton, and I will on a lot of the areas that I brought up right there. But to find your passion, to create your passion, become a master of a skill. It's that simple.